By the end of this video, you'll have some colorful steps and walls for your obstacle course, even if it's your very first time in Roblox Studio. And in the process, you'll learn all the basic controls that you need to know. Always pause the video and rewind as you need to because it's important to get every step right. Go at your own pace. Once you've logged into Roblox Studio, if it doesn't look like this, go up here to New, and then click on Baseplate Template to open a new blank project. Once it opens, you can see there's a ton of free models over here in this toolbox window. Everything from houses to working cars, you just click on the image and it'll add it to the screen. You can see that everything that gets added to your screen also gets added over here in this Explorer window where it says Workspace. And the same way, I can click on an item to select it. See, if I click on the house, we get this blue box around it that shows we've selected the house. And if I click on this car, we get this blue box around it that says we've selected the car. We can also select it over here in the workspace. Now, we can't even see the whole house right now. So in order to do that, we have to move our camera. First, you click anywhere on this screen to make sure that your camera is active, and then you can hit W to move it forward, A to move it left, S to move it back, and D to move it right. Q will move it down, and E will also move it up. And you can select an item, like I'm going to click on this house here, and then hit F to center it. And now it's moved our camera a little bit below the base plate. That's why we can't see our floor. So I'm going to hit E, move it up a little bit, and now we can see everything again. And I know that these camera controls are a lot to remember, so I've made a cheat sheet for you so you can always use that if you need it for reference. Find that in the description below this video. One last thing we can do with our camera, if I right click and then drag, it'll rotate my camera's view. A lot of times you can use the WASD keys to move the camera while also rotating to get a cool result and move the camera how you need. So right now I'm right clicking and dragging while moving the camera with the keys. So there's endless possibilities for what we can make, especially with all these free models over here. But we're gonna make the obby that I showed in the demo so that we can have a cool game fast. And then you can use everything you learn from making the obby in your next game. So for now, I'm gonna select our house by clicking on it, and then I'm gonna hold shift and select the car. So now both are selected at the same time, and I'm gonna hit delete to get rid of them. One quick trick you can do is if you hit Control Z, that'll undo the last thing you did, and you can hit Control Z a couple times to undo a lot of steps, right? And so I want my workspace empty right now, so I'm gonna leave it like this. I'm also gonna close out of the toolbox and the terrain editor. We'll learn about those later. Go up here and click on Part. It's gonna create a new brick in your workspace. There's a number of different shapes you can make that you can access by clicking this arrow under part. We have a block, sphere, wedge, corner, but for now, we just want this block. So I'm gonna zoom into it by hitting F, and then zoom out a little bit by hitting S. And now we're gonna move it around a little bit. So one way to move it is to click on it and drag it around. Another way is to go up to here to where it says move and click on that. This gives us arrows that we can use to drag our part in any direction. So the red will only move it forward and backwards, the blue will move it side to side, and the green will move it up into the air. If we go back and click and drag on it, you'll see that we actually can't move our part up into the air just by clicking and dragging on it. That's where this move tool really comes into play. We can also change the size of our part by clicking scale and then dragging in any direction. Just like our blue handles only move our part from side to side and back and forth, and our green one only moves it up and down, just like that, with scale, you can drag on the green handle and that'll change the size up and down. And the red will change the size back and forth, and the blue will change the size side to side. And the last tool up here is this rotate tool, which is gonna let us spin the part around. So I'm gonna change my camera angle so this is a little easier to see. So I'm right clicking and I'm pressing E to move up into the air, and I'm right clicking to drag it down so we're still looking at our part. Okay. See how our part looks like it's on the ground from this angle, but if we move it back down, we can see that it's floating? That's something to keep in mind as you're working through Roblox Studio, is sometimes a part may look a certain way from one angle, but then when you change the angle, it's different. That's because we're working in 3D space. So I'm gonna go to spin our part, and you can see that it's jumping from position to position rather than spinning freely. You can change this by going up here to Model, click that, and then in the section that says Snap to Grid, click this blue checkbox next to where it says Rotate. Now our part turns freely like you may have been expecting. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that rotation. One other thing to know about it is if we turn this snap back on and change this number down to 15 or whatever you want, it changes how small the jumps are between the position. We're going to put this snap to use later when we go to build our walls. Okay, so I'm going to delete this part and create a brand new one so we can get started on our steps. So make sure you click on your part so that it's selected and go over here to where it says Properties. This whole section here is called the Properties window. It'll show us a bunch of different information about the part, and we can also change our part's information here. So if we click this box where it says Color and go up and we make our stairs purple like they were in the demo obby, we can see we've made our part purple. And you can also change the material, to marble, it'll add this texture to it, or neon, it'll make it glow. I'm just gonna leave it as plastic for now. You can make it whatever you want. And if we go up here and click base plate, we can see that we're now looking at the information for our base plate, which is the floor. So if we change the color on it, we change the color of our floor. So this properties window is going to show us the properties for any part that we have selected. So I'm going to go back to our part that we turned purple, click on it, and now we're going to scroll down here in the property window to where it says size. Just like we would measure a rectangle in real life by saying it's 4 inches wide by 1 inch tall by 2 inches long, we measure our rectangle the same way in Roblox Studio using studs. So instead of saying it's 4 inches wide, we would say it's 4 studs wide. And we can see how wide it is, how tall it is, and how long it is just by going down in the property window and scrolling down to where it says size. You click this arrow and it breaks out each of the different sides. And if you change this number, you'll see it also changes our side. So if we make it 4 studs wide instead of 2, it gets wider. And if you want to make your part the exact same size as mine, it was 4 studs deep, 7.5 studs tall, and 7 studs wide. And right now we see that we have this blue rectangle showing the top of our piece, but on the bottom there's no blue rectangle. So I think what that means, if I move my camera down, hitting Q, part of our part that's under our floor. So if we go back up to the move tool, click on the green arrow and drag it up, and we see now this blue rectangle that's at the bottom, we know there's no more of our part under the map. So the next thing we can do is duplicate our part. So if I hit Control D, that duplicates it in the exact same place. So we see over here, there's 2 parts, but on our screen, it only shows 1 part. That's because both our parts are in the exact same place. And if I click and drag it out to the side, sure enough, it shows us that we have a second part. So I'm gonna hit Control Z so it goes back to its original space, and I'm gonna show you how you can move it so each stair is exactly lined up. If we could do it manually and drag it so, this stair is here, and then our next stair is here, and then we increase the size. But as you can see, that's not exactly perfect. There's more space here than there is here. So how do we get it the exact right size? So I'm going to hit Control Z to go back to where we have our 2 parts. You see them in the workspace, but they are in the exact same spot, so we only see 1. And we're going to scroll down here to where our properties are, and we're going to look for the origin position and open the position. Just like how with our size, it was represented by numbers, our position is also represented by numbers. And you can see if we drag it on this red arrow, as we move it to the right, our X value goes up. So the higher our X value is, the farther this direction it's gonna be. And the lower our X value is, the farther this direction it's gonna be. And as you can see, if it goes too far left, below 0, we start to get a negative number. So I'm gonna hit Control Z and bring it back to its original spot. To put it into the place that I want, I'm just gonna add, so you see I put a plus sign there, and then right 10, I'm just gonna add 10 to our X value. And there, it moved our part 10 studs in the X direction. And I'm gonna duplicate this part again, Control D, and we're gonna move this part another 10 studs. So plus 10. So right now there's 10 studs between each of these parts that we're going to make into our stairs. So the next thing we gotta do is change the height. So we're gonna click on this middle one here and scroll all the way back down to our size again. And we're gonna make each of these 5 studs taller. So Y is gonna be our height, and you can check that by clicking scale up here and then drag this. And sure enough, as we drag it on the green direction, our Y value changes. So I'm gonna hit Control Z so it's back to what it originally was, 7.5, and we're gonna add 5 to it. There we go. And we're gonna drag it up so we can see that bottom rectangle. There it is. And we're gonna do that for this one. But this time we have to add 5 twice so that it's 5 taller than our middle one here. Because if we add 5 once and drag it up, it's the same height as this middle one, so we're gonna add another 5. All right, drag it up, see the bottom rectangle, and there we go. And if you remember from the demo, I had made this one orange, so I'm gonna click this middle one, I'm gonna go up to the top, and we're gonna find a nice orange color. Here. Yeah, I like that, nice and bright. And click OK. And we're gonna make one last piece. It's gonna be a floating platform. So click on this last one, duplicate it again, Control D, scroll down. All right, we're gonna move the position off to the side, another 10 like we did with all the others. So go to the X position because that's the direction that we're moving our stairs on. X plus 10. And instead of making a stair this time, we're gonna make like a floating platform. So I'm gonna hit scale, and then I'm gonna drag this up, and I'm gonna look at the Y value and just, let's make it 1 stud tall. Now I'm gonna hit E and move my camera up so I can look at it from a different angle. I actually want it to be a square in this direction, so I'm just gonna drag out this red until the X value and the Z value are the same. The square is gonna have the same length and width on each side. And then I wanna make this platform orange. So to make it the exact same color as this middle stair here, I'm gonna click on it, then I'm gonna scroll up to where it says color. I'm gonna click on this number here, hit Control C, that'll copy the number. Now click back on the platform because we wanna change its color. Go to where its colors, hit backspace, and hit Control V, and that'll paste in our color from the orange part that we just selected, and hit enter. Now let's hit play and test it out. Click anywhere in the game so you can control your character. So our platform fell on the ground, and our parts, we can just walk into them and push them around. And we don't want that in our game, and that's actually really easy to fix. So let's hit stop and we'll go in and fix it. So I'm gonna click on our first stair, and I'm gonna hold shift, click on the second stair, and still while holding shift, click on the other 2 parts that we've made. Now with all of them selected, you can see they all have this blue box around them. We're just gonna go up here to where this little anchor icon is and click it. You can also anchor parts within the property tab by having them selected and then scrolling down to this section that says part and anchored, and make sure this blue check is on. And so now when I hit play, we see everything is stuck exactly where we wanted it to be. And now when you want parts to be affected by gravity, you're gonna leave this anchored thing off, and you'll see how that comes into play in future projects. So you may remember from the demo, our example had walls. This is a really easy way to give your game a complete finished feel when you're done with it. So we're actually gonna build those walls now. I'm gonna move this spawn location a little bit closer to the beginning of our stairs because we're gonna want our stairs right up against the wall. I'm gonna select this first stair and hit Control D, and now I'm gonna drag it off to the side. And we're gonna wanna make it really big. So go down in the properties tab to where it says size, open this up, and we're gonna make it 55 in the X direction, 40 in the Y direction, and just 1 in the Z direction. Okay, so then we're gonna wanna drag it up till we see that blue rectangle at the bottom. There we go, put it in place, and then drag it so it's touching our stairs. Cool, and just move your camera around so that you can see it's touching. Cool, so then just drag it so that our stairs are roughly in the center. It doesn't have to be perfect. Move the spawn point so that it's gonna be inside the wall. Okay, I'm gonna select our wall again. I'm gonna hit Control D. That'll duplicate the wall. And now I'm gonna rotate it. But before I rotate it, I'm gonna go up to model, and then under snap to grid, we're gonna turn this up to 90. And that's gonna give us a perfect T-cross when we go to rotate our wall. Make sure this says 90, and then make sure this blue check mark next to rotate is checked. And then on this green axis, turn it. And if we zoom in right at that intersection, see it's a perfect T-cross. We got right angles in every direction. So I've selected it. Now I'm gonna go to my move tool. I'm gonna move it up here, and then we're gonna try to get this corner perfectly lined up. I accidentally moved this platform out of place, hit Control Z, move it back. Right clicking and rotating while moving my camera. And just take your time with this and keep practicing. It gets easier and easier to move the camera and move these parts as you go. Okay, not lined up perfectly. There we go. Cool, and we actually don't even have to rotate our next parts because we can duplicate this wall, click on our original wall, duplicate, and just drag it on this blue arrow till it lines up. It's close, I'm gonna zoom in. Okay, they're touching, perfect. And we're just gonna get this last one. So I zoom out, hit Control D, drag it over here, get it close, zoom in, drag it so it lines up perfectly. Awesome. And remember, our walls are already anchored because we started by duplicating this stair that we anchored at the beginning. So I'm gonna hit play and test it out. Great, so just like that, we can already see our obby starting to come together. We have our walls, we have our first set of stairs, our platform. Let's do one more thing before we move on to the next tutorial. And in that next tutorial, we're gonna write our very first script. So let's hit stop. And now, while holding shift, I'm gonna select each of these walls. Click on this first wall, now hold shift, click on the next wall, holding shift, click on the next two. Cool, then I'm gonna go over here and right click and say group as folder. Then I can click on the name and you see how it's turned this white box. Now I can hit backspace and we're just gonna name this folder walls. And we're gonna do the same thing for our stairs. And this time I'm gonna select them over here. So I click the first one and then I hold shift and I click the last one. It's selected all of them as you can see. And I right click and say group as folder. And we're gonna name this folder stairs. So click, backspace everything that's in it, and say stairs. Perfect, that's everything for this video. Now in the next one, let's see how we can use code to make our game even cooler. Keep on going with the series.